The fluorescent lights of the downtown subway station hummed overhead, washing everything in a cold, metallic glare. Marcus Hale adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal suit, the silk brushing lightly against his wrists as he waited for the evening train. He carried nothing but a leather briefcase and the exhaustion of a 15-hour day at the Supreme Court offices, exhaustion he normally hid well, until tonight. He felt the shift before he saw it. Footsteps slowing, a radio crackling, the air tightening like a fist. A police officer stopped a few feet away, eyes narrowing, gaze dropping to Marcus's briefcase as though it were a weapon. "Evening," Marcus said, forcing calm. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer, too close. "Show me what's in the case," he said coldly, and already inching toward his holster. Marcus blinked. "I'm just waiting for the train. I work." "You heard me." A few commuters turned, sensing trouble, but none stepped closer. Marcus opened the latches slowly. Inside were only legal documents and tomorrow's briefing folders. Still, the officer's jaw tightened. "What's a guy like you doing with files like these?" he muttered. Marcus felt the words slice through him, coded, ugly, familiar. Another officer approached. "Is there a problem?" "Yeah," the first one replied. "We got ourselves a suspicious individual. Might be impersonating a professional." The second officer's gaze hardened. "Put your hand behind your back." Marcus froze. "I haven't done anything." The first officer leaned in, voice low and sharp. "You look like trouble." "That's enough." Cold metal cuff snapped shut, and the train doors slid open behind him, empty, waiting, as he was led away. Marcus Hale had always believed he could move through the city like any other professional, head down, schedule tight, footsteps steady. But tonight, as two officers boxed him in under the harsh subway lights, he realized belief meant nothing when someone else had already decided who he was. Hands visible, the lead officer barked. Marcus raised them slowly. "Officer, I'm not resisting." Didn't ask for commentary, the man snapped. Marcus swallowed hard and kept his voice calm. "I'm just heading home. I work in the Supreme Court building." The officer smirked. "Sure you do." The second officer circled him, eyes scanning his tailored suit with a kind of mocking curiosity. "Nice threads. Borrowed." Marcus felt the humiliation burn beneath his ribs. "They're mine." "That right," the lead officer said. "Funny, you don't look like the type." Marcus steadied himself. The type for what? For anything legitimate. The words hit like a slap. A few commuters glanced over, but only glanced. No one stepped close. The second officer tapped Marcus's briefcase. "Open it." "I already did back there." "Do it again," the lead officer ordered. "Slower this time. Don't make sudden moves." Marcus knelt carefully, flipping the latches. Inside lay files printed with tomorrow's docket notes, case summaries, judicial schedules, sealed advisory memos. Nothing dangerous. Nothing unusual. Still, the officer huffed. "Yeah, looks like stolen paperwork." Marcus stared at him. "These are court documents. I handle administrative." "Save it." The man cut in. "You think wearing a suit makes you untouchable." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." The other officer radioed in. "Possible suspect. Male. Acting evasive." Marcus's breath caught. "Evasive? I'm standing still." The lead officer shrugged. "Funny how that works." Marcus straightened. "Officer, with respect, you're making a mistake." The man stepped inches from his face. "The mistake is you thinking you get to decide how this goes." Silence swelled around them. The train platform felt colder. Marcus tried once more. "Check my ID." "We will, after you're in cuffs." Marcus froze. "What? Why?" "You fit a description," the lead officer said. Marcus's heart thudded. "What description?" "A suspicious individual," he said simply. The second officer moved behind Marcus, hands already hovering. "Turn around," he ordered. Marcus hesitated. Just a second. But hesitation was enough. "Resisting," the lead officer muttered loudly, as if for an invisible audience. "I'm not." Cold metal snapped onto his wrist so tightly he gasped. The second officer pushed him toward the wall. "Quit fighting." "I'm not fighting," Marcus managed. "Didn't ask," the lead officer said again. Two teenagers nearby recorded on their phones but said nothing. An older woman shook her head but kept walking. Marcus felt the helplessness closing like a vice. They grabbed his briefcase, rifling through it roughly, crumpling documents that judges would read tomorrow. Marcus winced. "Look at this," the lead officer said mockingly, holding up a folder labeled Internal Judicial Calendar. "Man's got props now." "It's real," Marcus said sharply. "I'm Chief Administrative Director." The officer burst out laughing. "You? Chief Director? That's rich." Marcus's voice cracked. "Call the court building. They'll confirm." "Maybe later," the officer said, "after we process you." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Process me for what?" The officer leaned in so close Marcus smelled the stale coffee on his breath. "For disturbing the peace." "I wasn't disturbing." "Disturbing," the officer repeated slowly. "The peace." Marcus's pulse hammered. "You turned off your body cams," he said quietly. Both officers stiffened. The lead one hissed, "Watch yourself." "You think you're clever," the second officer added. Marcus shook his head. "I think I know my rights." The lead officer grinned. "Rights? Out here." He leaned back, raising his hand in a mocking salute. "What you have is whatever I say you have." A surge of shame twisted through Marcus, sharp and deep. He had spent 10 years serving the justice system, defending its structure, believing in its process. Yet here he was, reduced to a threat, a caricature, a target. They marched him toward the patrol car. "Step in," the second officer ordered. Marcus hesitated only because the cuffs dug painfully into his wrists. The lead officer muttered, add resisting to the report. Marcus's stomach dropped. "I'm cooperating." "Then cooperate faster." They shoved him inside. The door slammed. The world outside blurred into streaks of gray and fluorescent light. Marcus leaned forward, breathing hard, wrists throbbing, mind racing. The officers stood outside the car for a moment, speaking quietly, and then Marcus saw it. A small red light on each of their cameras. Not glowing, not blinking. Off. Deliberately off. His blood ran cold. He realized then, they didn't want this recorded. Not any of it. Not him. Not the truth. Not what was going to happen next. The precinct smelled of old coffee, sweat, and something metallic beneath it all, like the echo of every bad night that had ever passed through its doors. Marcus Hale stepped inside as the officers guided him forward, wrists cuffed, shoulders tight, jaw set in a quiet pressure that held back everything he wanted to say. The lead officer nudged him. "Keep moving." "I'm not resisting," Marcus replied. "Didn't say you were." The man shot back. "Yet." Inside the booking area, several officers looked up. A few raised their brows when they saw the suit. One murmured, another one pretending to be somebody. Marcus drew a breath. "I'm not pretending." The lead officer barked. "Quiet." A desk sergeant asked, without looking up from his monitor, "What's he in for?" "Disturbing the peace," the officer said smoothly. "Possible falsified identification." Marcus stiffened. "My ID is real." The sergeant glanced at him. "We'll decide that." Marcus started again, slowly, deliberately. "Sir, my name is Marcus Hale. I am the Chief Administrative Director for the Supreme." The sergeant cut him off. Yeah. Everybody's a lawyer or a judge in here." The lead officer smirked. "This one's aiming high, Sarge. Says he runs the Supreme Court." Marcus exhaled. "I didn't say that." "You implied it." "No, I stated my actual job title." The sergeant waved dismissively. "He'll cool off in holding." Marcus tried once more. "I need to make a call. You're required." "You'll call when we say," the sergeant snapped. "Sit him down." The lead officer shoved Marcus toward a bench. His wrist jolted painfully as he stumbled. The second officer chuckled. "Careful. Wouldn't want you adding assaulting an officer to your night." Marcus looked at him steadily. I haven't touched anyone. The lead officer muttered, not the point. Two officers at a nearby desk whispered about him. What's with the attitude? Probably pulled this stunt before. He'll break in holding. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, not from anger alone, but from the sickening familiarity of it. He had spent years working with judicial oversight committees, reading complaints, reviewing misconduct cases. He knew exactly how these stories unfolded. He had just never expected to be inside one. A young officer approached, a rookie, barely older than 22, uniform crisp, eyes uncertain. You, need water? He asked softly. The lead officer snapped, Rookie, don't get involved. I was just asking. Don't. The officer said sharply. This one's trouble. Marcus met the rookie's eyes. There was a flicker of recognition there, small, timid, but real. Sir, the rookie said quietly, what did you say your name was? The lead officer barked, don't talk to him. But Marcus answered anyway. Marcus Hale. The rookie's brows lifted slightly. Hale, like the judicial briefing last month. The room still for a fraction of a second. Marcus held his gaze. Yes. The lead officer stepped between them. Rookie, back to your post. But Sarge. Now. The rookie swallowed and walked away, but kept glancing over, thinking, processing. Marcus shifted in his seat. Thank you, he murmured. The lead officer's face tightened. You don't thank him. You don't talk. You wait. Marcus lifted his chin. For what? For someone to decide whether I'm allowed to exist properly. The officer's lips curled. For someone to confirm whether you're lying. I'm not lying. We'll see. A heavy silence followed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second scraping against Marcus's nose. Finally, the sergeant called out, Bring him to interview 2. The lead officer cracked his knuckles. My pleasure. They uncuffed Marcus only long enough to recuff him in front. The metal bit into a new part of his wrists. He followed them into a small concrete room, its single chair cold and its table scarred. Sit, the lead officer ordered. Marcus Saturday. The sergeant entered with a clipboard. All right, let's start simple. Name. Marcus asked calmly, Is this being recorded? The sergeant stared at him with a faint smile. Why? Something to hide. No, something to protect. We'll record when we feel it's appropriate. Marcus steadied his breathing. My name is Marcus Hale. Occupation. I am the Chief Administrative Director for the Supreme Court staff. The sergeant laughed out loud. You're really sticking with that. It's the truth. You have credentials. They're in my wallet. The arresting officers refused to look. The lead officer shrugged. Didn't want to handle possible forged documents. They are not forged, Marcus said sharply. Easy, the sergeant warned. Marcus leaned forward. Call the Supreme Court building. Ask for the administrative office. They will confirm who I am within 30 seconds. The sergeant tapped his pen thoughtfully. We'll call when we get to it. That should be now, Marcus said. The lead officer leaned back against the wall. Listen, man, you're making this harder. Stop pretending. Just admit you were trying to pass yourself off as someone important. Marcus stared at him. I am someone important. The officer scoffed. Sure, and I'm the president. Marcus folded his hands, fingers trembling. This is an abuse of power. The sergeant's smile thinned. Big words. Dangerous words. Accurate words, Marcus replied. The lead officer opened the folder of documents they'd seized. What's all this? You steal these off a desk somewhere? Trying to sell them? Trade them. Marcus's voice shook. Those are sealed judicial documents. They contain tomorrow's case schedule, internal memos, and confidential notes. They cannot be mishandled. The sergeant frowned. Confidential? Who? Yes. And you're just carrying them around. I was bringing them home to finish reviewing. The lead officer scoffed. Why would they trust you with these? Marcus met his gaze evenly. Because I earned that trust. The sergeant tapped his pen again. Well, let's see if that checks out. He left the room. The lead officer paced slowly behind Marcus. You know, you're making waves, acting like you belong somewhere you don't. I belong exactly where my work takes me, Marcus replied. The officer leaned in. No, you belong where we put you. Marcus exhaled shakily. You turned off your body cameras. The officer's smile faltered. Watch it. It's a violation. Watch it. It will be noted. The officer slammed his hands onto the table so hard the metal rattled. I said, watch it. Marcus didn't flinch. Footsteps returned. The sergeant poked his head in. We're confirming his identity. The lead officer tensed. What? Someone at the court will call back. The officer's jaw tightened. Tell them to call the direct line. Maybe it'll ring out. The sergeant shrugged. Already gave him the number. The door shut again. Marcus breathed out slowly. This doesn't end the way you think it will. The lead officer glared at him. Oh, it ends exactly how I think. Marcus's voice lowered. No, it ends with the truth. The officer leaned back, eyes darkening. Truth is whatever goes in the report. No, Marcus whispered. Not this time. Quiet footsteps passed outside. Whispers. Movement. Tension like a storm building. And Marcus understood something in that moment. They knew the truth was coming, and they were terrified of it. The holding room was cold enough to seep through Marcus's suit jacket, settling into his bones like a punishment. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him, flickering every few seconds, throwing jagged shadows across the concrete floor. He sat on the metal bench, wrists still cuffed, breathing slowly, forcing himself not to replay the arrest in his mind. Footsteps approached, lighter, uncertain. The door opened. Officer Alvarez stepped inside. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. Sir, I'm sorry. I needed to check on you. Marcus looked up. Thank you. Alvarez swallowed. They shouldn't have brought you in. I recognized your name as soon as you said it. You testified during that judicial administrative hearing last spring, the one on ethics reforms. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes. I watched the whole thing on my academy break. Alvarez rubbed the back of his neck nervously. I know who you are. Marcus studied him. The young man's anxiety was palpable, shoulders tight, eyes darting toward the door every few seconds. Then you know this is a mistake. Not a mistake, Alvarez whispered. A cover-up. Marcus's pulse quickened. Explain. They turned off their body cams the moment they saw you weren't going to argue back, Alvarez said. And when you mentioned the Supreme Court, they decided to handle it internally. He made quotation marks in the air. Marcus felt the air thin. They are going to fabricate the report. Yes. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Of course. Alvarez leaned closer. Listen, they are saying you resisted arrest, that you raised your voice, that you refused to show ID. Marcus opened his eyes. All lies. I know. Alvarez hesitated. But they outrank me. If I contradict them. You'll be targeted, Marcus finished. Alvarez nodded miserably. Exactly. For a moment, the silence was suffocating. Then Marcus asked, Why are you helping me? Alvarez's voice cracked. Because we're supposed to protect people, not humiliate them. Because my father raised me better than this uniform is teaching me. And because you don't deserve this. Marcus exhaled. Thank you. Truly. Alvarez glanced toward the hallway again. I can't stay long. They think I'm filing evidence logs. Did the sergeant confirm my identity? They're waiting for a call back, Alvarez whispered. But the lead officer is trying to get to the phone first. Marcus stiffened. To intercept it. To redirect it, Alvarez said. Maybe stole it. Maybe claimed the call never came. The corruption was so blatant it almost felt surreal. Is there anyone here who will listen? Marcus asked quietly. Alvarez shook his head. Not openly. Not without permission. This precinct runs on seniority. On silence. You challenge the wrong person. You lose scheduled privileges, or training slots, or your next evaluation, or worse. Marcus absorbed that, heavy and bitter, so the system protects itself. Always. Alvarez looked around once more, then reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small pen and a folded piece of paper. "Hide this," he whispered. Marcus frowned. "What for?" "Write down everything. Names, times, words they said, every threat, every order, every violation. If this goes to investigation, details matter. And if they try to make something disappear," Alvarez tapped the pen lightly, "you'll have your own record." Marcus stared at him, this young man standing in a storm far bigger than himself, risking his career for the truth. "Officer Alvarez," Marcus said quietly, "you realize what you're doing could cost you your job." "It'll cost me more if I stay silent," Alvarez whispered. Marcus took the pen with his cuffed hands, maneuvering awkwardly. Alvarez helped position the paper on his lap. "Write quickly," the rookie urged, "before anyone notices." Marcus began scribbling, awkward, slanted lines because of the restraints, but legible. Arresting officers, Wagner, lead, Reddick, secondary. Time, approximate 7:43 p.m. body cams deactivated upon approach. Statements, you look like trouble. Truth is whatever goes in the report. Resisting, false claim. Threats of additional charges. He wrote until the pen trembled between his fingers. Alvarez stood guard at the door, pretending to check his phone, pretending he wasn't terrified. Finally, Marcus folded the paper and slid it under his pant leg near the sock. Alvarez let out a shaky breath. "Good." "Thank you," Marcus said again. Alvarez's jaw tightened. "I shouldn't be the only one doing the right thing." "You shouldn't," Marcus agreed softly. The rookie took a step back. "When this blows up, because it will, remember one thing." "What?" Alvarez met his eyes, and something resolute, fragile, and brave flickered there. "I'm not like them." Marcus nodded. "I know." The door suddenly rattled. Alvarez stiffened. "Someone's coming." He moved quickly, snatching the pen from Marcus's hand, tucking it into his pocket, smoothing his uniform. The lead officer's voice bled through the door. "Rookie, you in there?" Alvarez stepped out immediately. "Yes, sir. Just checking on the detainee." The lead officer eyed him. "You don't need to check anything. Go reorganize the evidence lockers. Now." "Yes, sir." Alvarez hurried away. The officer watched him go with suspicion, then turned to Marcus. "Having fun?" he asked mockingly. Marcus said nothing. The officer smirked. "Good. Stay quiet. We're working out how to process you." "Or how to hide what you've done," Marcus murmured. The officer's gaze sharpened. "Watch yourself." He slammed the door shut. Marcus sat alone again, alone, but no longer powerless. He had names. He had details. He had a witness. And he had a feeling, the first flicker of hope tonight, that the truth would break through, even if it cost him. Marcus sat alone in the holding room, the air thick with a metallic scent of fear, fear that did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to the precinct. He could feel it shifting through the halls like a draft, whispering beneath every hurried step and half-closed door. Something had changed. He heard it first, raised voices behind the wall. A sergeant's agitated growl. "What do you mean he might be real?" Then the lead officer's sharp reply. "I'm saying it's a mix-up. We don't know that's him." "You said he claimed to be someone important." "He pretended." The officer fired back. A pause. Then the sergeant shouted, louder than before, "The court office called back." Marcus felt his heartbeat slow, not speed up. The truth was in motion now, and panic was blooming. Boots thudded toward the hallway. The lead officer barked, "Turn off the speaker. Don't let the others hear this." Marcus listened as the voices faded, swallowed behind a slammed door. His pulse drummed in his ears, but he held still, calm, waiting. The kind of stillness he learned in years of watching powerful men unravel under pressure. Minutes stretched. Then the door flew open so hard it bounced off the wall. The sergeant stormed in, followed by the lead officer, whose face was flushed with anger and fear. Marcus met both their eyes. I take it the call went through. Shut up, the lead officer snapped. The sergeant pointed at him. Is it true? Are you really the chief administrative director? Marcus kept his voice steady. Yes. The lead officer muttered, His lying. The sergeant cut him off. Be quiet. The court verified his position. Full credentials. Photo ID. 10 years of service. Marcus watched the lead officer's jaw clench. They must be mistaken. Stop talking, the sergeant growled. Stop digging a hole. The lead officer stepped forward, desperate. Look, we can still fix this. All we need is... Marcus interrupted quietly. The truth. The officer whipped around. The truth won't protect you. It never does, Marcus said, but it will expose you. The sergeant slammed a hand on the table. Enough, both of you. He turned to Marcus. The court security office is sending someone here. Marcus nodded. Good. No, not good, the sergeant muttered. This is going to turn into a disaster. For whom? Marcus asked. Neither officer answered. The sergeant rubbed his temples. Okay. We need to figure out what happened. Write the timeline. Check the cameras. Pull the footage. Marcus tilted his head slightly. You'll find nothing. The room froze. The lead officer finally said it aloud. We turned off the cameras. The sergeant cursed under his breath. Why would you do that? Do you know how this looks? Do you understand the magnitude? The lead officer snapped defensively. I thought he was lying. I thought he was some con artist. And he was acting suspicious. Marcus stared at him. I was standing still. You hesitated, the officer shouted. I hesitated because you were already treating me like a threat. The officer jabbed a finger at him. And now you're playing victim. No, Marcus said softly. I'm telling the truth. The officer's face twisted in frustration, like truth itself was a personal attack. The sergeant paced back and forth, muttering. This is bad, really bad. The court will demand documentation. Every officer involved, every file, every second. Marcus nodded. And your internal logs. Both officers froze. The logs? The sergeant asked. Yes, Marcus said. The internal messaging platform you use to communicate. The lead officer's expression went pale. What about the logs? Marcus held his gaze. I imagine they contain things you would prefer the court not to see. A tremor rippled across the officer's face, guilt mixed with fury. You think you know everything, don't you? Marcus replied, I know enough. The sergeant stormed out, yelling for the watch commander to review prior calls. The door slammed shut again, leaving Marcus and the lead officer alone. The silence was razor-sharp. The officer leaned on the table. Listen, if you say we treated you with respect, if you say this was a misunderstanding, we'll release you without charges. Everyone walks away clean. Marcus stared at him with disbelief. You want me to lie? I want us both to survive this, the officer hissed. That's not survival, Marcus said. That's complicity. The officer's voice cracked with anger. Do you think anyone will believe you over us? Over the system? Marcus leaned forward. Yes. The officer blinked, startled. Because you know what's coming, Marcus continued. The court security team, internal affairs, oversight committees, and the rookie officer who saw everything. The lead officer stiffened. Rookie, Alvarez. Marcus nodded. The officer's face twisted. He wouldn't dare. He already did, Marcus replied. A choking silence filled the room. Then the officer whispered, You're going to ruin everything. No, Marcus said quietly. You ruined yourselves. The sergeant burst back into the room, chest heaving. They are 10 minutes out, he said, from the court. The lead officer swallowed hard. We need a plan. The sergeant shot him a glare. The plan is damage control. We'll say he refused to cooperate. That's a lie, Marcus said. The sergeant ignored him. We'll say he was confrontational. Another lie. We'll say... Marcus interrupted. "You're listing charges you can't prove." The sergeant snapped. "We don't need proof. We need consistency." Marcus looked him squarely in the eye. Consistency collapses under scrutiny. A deep, uneasy silence settled. Outside the room, officers scrambled. Phones rang. Someone cursed loudly. Power was shifting in real time, slipping through their fingers. Then, through the narrow window, Marcus saw Alvarez standing at the far end of the hall, pale, afraid, but watching everything. The rookie knew. The precinct knew. And now, they knew the storm was coming. The sergeant turned toward the door, voice tight. "Clear the hallway. Prepare the front desk. Nobody says a word unless I authorize it." The lead officer whispered, almost to himself, "We're done." Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth had already entered the building, and panic was its shadow. The precinct buzzed like a hornet's nest struck with a stick. Phones rang. Chairs scraped. Officers whispered in frantic clusters. The air felt charged, as though lightning were gathering just outside the walls. Marcus sat in the holding room, hands cuffed in front, wrists burning. But inside, something steadier took root, resolve. The door jerked open. The sergeant marched in, tension coiled tight in his jaw. "They're here," he muttered. Marcus remained still. "Good." "Don't start," the sergeant snapped. "You think this is victory? You think this ends clean?" He leaned in. "This precinct has survived worse than you." Marcus held his gaze. "Then it survived far too much." The sergeant's nostrils flared. "You're not walking out of here like a hero." "I'm not trying to be one," Marcus said softly. "I just want the truth." The sergeant's silence said everything. Truth was the one thing they feared. A sudden swell of voices rose from the front lobby, firm, authoritative, unbothered by the precinct's chaos. Heavy footsteps approached. The door burst open again. A tall man in a dark federal-style jacket stepped inside, flanked by two officers with Supreme Court security badges. His presence filled the room like a cold wind. "Mr. Hale," he said, voice clipped, "are you unharmed?" Marcus slowly rose. "Physically, yes." The man nodded once. "I am Chief Security Officer Langford." He turned to the sergeant. "Explain." The lead officer shoved past the sergeant before he could speak. "Sir, we were handling a suspect who—" Langford raised a hand, silencing him effortlessly. "I did not ask you." The sergeant swallowed. It was a misunderstanding. He became uncooperative. Marcus interrupted quietly. "That is false." Langford gestured. "Uncuff him." The lead officer hesitated. "Sir, procedure." "Uncuff him," Langford repeated, voice like steel. The officer reluctantly stepped forward, fumbling with the cuffs. Marcus winced as metal scraped over the bruised skin of his wrists. When the cuffs clicked open, he let his arms fall at his sides, feeling blood retain, feeling something else return too, dignity. Langford took Marcus's arm gently. "Let's get you out of here." The lead officer blurted, "Hold on. He still needs to be processed." "For what?" Langford asked sharply. The officer flinched. "Disturbing the peace." "What peace did he disturb?" Langford shot back. "The fragile ego of this precinct." A few officers nearby froze, pretending not to listen. "We had probable cause," the lead officer muttered. "Show me," Langford said. The officer blinked. "What?" "Show me your footage. Body cams. Station recordings. Anything documenting probable cause." The officer's throat clicked. Cameras were malfunctioning. Langford stepped closer. "All of them." The officer stammered. "There were issues." Langford's eyes narrowed dangerously. "How convenient." The sergeant tried to intervene. "Sir, if you'd allow us to gather." Langford cut him off. "The Supreme Court Chief Justice has been informed." A tremor shot through the room. Marcus watched the sergeant's face drain of color. The lead officer swayed slightly, suddenly unsteady. "The Chief Justice," the sergeant rasped. "Already?" Langford nodded. "And the Judicial Oversight Committee is arranging an emergency review." The lead officer's voice cracked. Tonight. Langford's expression hardened. When one of our own is dragged and humiliated. Yes, tonight. The room fell dead silent. Marcus didn't gloat. He felt no triumph, only pain and exhaustion. Langford turned to him. We're leaving. But before they stepped out, Marcus looked at the lead officer and said quietly, You could have checked my ID. You could have listened. You chose not to. The officer's jaw trembled with a mixture of anger and fear. You don't know what it's like, being out here, trying to read people, trying to stay alive. Marcus met his gaze evenly. You don't stay alive by dehumanizing others. Save the lecture, the officer muttered. This is how the job works. Then the job needs to change. Langford placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, guiding him toward the hall. As they stepped out, officers scrambled to stand straighter, to look neutral, to pretend they hadn't seen, heard, or enabled anything. Walking past them, Marcus noticed Alvarez standing near the corner, shoulders stiff, face pale. The rookie's eyes met Marcus's, and in that moment, Marcus offered him the faintest nod of gratitude. Alvarez exhaled, a tremor of relief passing through him. The sergeant snapped, Rookie, back to post. Alvarez straightened instantly, masking his expression. Yes, sir. Langford guided Marcus toward the main entrance. We'll take you directly to the court building. They are waiting. Who's waiting? Marcus asked. Senior staff, media teams, legal advisors. They've been informed you were detained illegally. Marcus's step slowed. Media? Langford nodded grimly. Someone leaked the arrest report before we got here. Marcus's stomach tightened. Leaked? Yes. He didn't have to guess who. Alvarez. The kid had done far more than slip him a pen. Langford paused at the glass doors. Mr. Hale, once you leave this building, everything changes. Marcus breathed in slowly. I know. Are you prepared? No, Marcus said honestly, but I'll face it. Outside, lights flashed, news cameras, reporters, flashing microphones. Supreme Court vehicles waited at the curb. As the doors swung open, reporters shouted questions. Mr. Hale, were you targeted? Did officers use racial profiling? Were you assaulted? Were cameras turned off intentionally? Langford shielded him as they walked. Marcus didn't answer yet. His throat was tight. His wrists throbbed. His dignity felt bruised. But as he stepped into the night air, he understood something. He wasn't alone anymore, and the truth was no longer a whisper. It was a storm. Morning sunlight crept across Marcus's apartment, soft and warm, everything the night before had not been. But peace didn't return with the sunrise. His phone buzzed constantly, vibrating across the counter like a live wire. News alerts, emails, calls he wasn't ready to take. He stared at the screen, exhaustion tugging at his bones. His wrists were still raw, faint purple bruises forming a cruel bracelet around each one. A sharp knock sounded at the door. Marcus, a voice called. It's Jenna. Jenna Ward, communications director for the Supreme Court staff. Steady, brilliant, unflinchingly protective. Marcus unlocked the door, wincing at the soreness in his shoulders. Jenna stepped in, her expression tightening as she saw his wrists. Good. Marcus. I'm okay. You're not okay, she said, voice trembling with anger. Sit, please. He sank onto the couch. Jenna placed a bag on the table, pulling out printed news articles. They leaked the arrest report, she said, but not the official one, an internal draft. Marcus frowned. The one filled with lies. Yes, claims you resisted arrest, claims you shouted at them, claims your documents were suspicious. He rubbed his temples. Of course. But that's not all. Jenna laid another paper in front of him. This hit the media early this morning. A headline stared back at him. Supreme Court Administrator wrongfully arrested. Internal logs suggest possible racial motive. Marcus inhaled sharply. Logs. Jenna nodded. Someone leaked screenshot from the precinct internal chat system, including comments from the lead officer. She hesitated before reading one aloud. Guy in a suit acting like he owns a city. Bet is playing dress-up again. Another, pulling the "I work for the court" card. Classic. And the worst, let's see how important he feels once he's in cuffs. Marcus closed his eyes, a wave of nausea rising. Who leaked them? He whispered. Jenna hesitated. They're anonymous, but the timestamp suggests it came from inside the precinct soon after you were taken in. Marcus opened his eyes. Alvarez. Jenna blinked. Who? A rookie officer. He helped me. Jenna exhaled slowly. Well, whoever it was, their leak changed everything. Public pressure is building fast. She handed him another article. Civil rights organizations demand answer city officials. Deeply concerned police department silent. Marcus sighed. This is all happening too fast. That's how these things always go, Jenna said. Silence, then eruption. A sudden vibration buzzed from Jenna's phone. She answered quickly. Ward speaking. Pause. Yes, here's with me. Another pause. Put it on speaker. Jenna set the phone on the coffee table. The tinny speaker crackled before a familiar voice filled the room. Marcus, it's Langford. Marcus leaned forward. I'm here. You need to see this, Langford said. Turn on the news. Jenna grabbed the remote and flipped to a major network. The lead officer, Officer Wagner, appeared on screen, stiff and postured behind a podium outside the precinct. Marcus's stomach sank. The reporter asked, Officer Wagner, do you believe the arrest was justified? Wagner clasped the podium tightly. The suspect, Mr. Hale, was not cooperative. He refused lawful commands. Our actions were appropriate to the situation. A second reporter cut in. Mr. Hale is a high-ranking Supreme Court official. Why was this not recognized? Wagner smirked faintly. Anyone can claim a title. We've dealt with impersonators before. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Wagner continued, I stand by my actions. I will not be intimidated by media distortion or powerful individuals attempting to spin the narrative. Jenna muttered, he's digging his own grave. Langford's voice came through the phone. Marcus, Oversight wants a formal statement from you by tonight. You should know, Wagner's union is already gearing up to defend him. They are claiming you escalated the encounter. Marcus rubbed his forehead. I didn't escalate anything. We know, Langford said, but they'll try to shift everything onto you. Jenna nodded. If they frame you as aggressive or deceptive, they'll argue the arrest was reasonable. Marcus whispered, this is bigger than just one officer. Exactly, Jenna said. This is a system circling its wagons. Langford spoke again. Marcus, I'll accompany you to the hearing tomorrow. You won't face them alone. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. The call ended. Jenna turned off the TV. Silence settled over the room. Finally, Marcus spoke. Jenna, I'm tired. I know, she whispered. But you're not done. Not yet. This shouldn't be happening. No, it shouldn't, but people need to see it. They need to see what power does when it feels threatened. Marcus looked down at his bruised wrists. I don't want to become a symbol. You're not a symbol, Jenna said gently. You're a man who deserves justice. He swallowed hard. What happens now? Jenna opened her tablet. Now, you prepare. For what? For tomorrow's hearing. But that's not until the investigation begins, Marcus said. It begins the moment you walk through the door, Jenna replied. They'll question you. They'll test your composure. They'll look for any crack to exploit. Marcus let out a slow, exhausted breath. I don't like being public. I know. I'm not a fighter. Jenna shook her head. Marcus, yes, you are. He looked at her, weary and uncertain. You've spent your whole career fixing systems from the inside, Jenna said softly. But now the system tried to break you. Marcus's voice trembled. And it almost did. But it didn't, she whispered. You're still here, and tomorrow you speak. Marcus ran a hand over his face. I'm scared, Jenna. Good, she said gently. Courage doesn't exist without fear. A tear slipped down Marcus's cheek before he could stop it. He wiped it quickly, but Jenna had already seen. She didn't say anything. She just placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. And for the first time since the arrest, Marcus let himself breathe. Tomorrow would be a battle, but he would walk into it standing tall. The Oversight Committee chamber was colder than Marcus expected, wide, sterile, every word swallowed by the high-carved ceiling. Rows of reporters waited behind a glass barrier, cameras silent but watching like eyes that never blinked. Jenna adjusted Marcus's tie one last time. You look steady. I don't feel steady, he murmured. That's all right, she whispered. Steady isn't the truth, but you know what is. Langford joined them, expression sharp. The committee is ready. Wagner will testify first. Marcus nodded. Good. Langford frowned. Are you sure? Yes, Marcus said quietly. Let him speak. A clerk opened the doors. Officer Wagner, please enter. Wagner walked in with the swagger of someone rehearsing righteousness. His uniform was immaculate, collar stiff, chin raised defiantly. He sat, straight-backed, at the witness table. The chairwoman began. Officer Wagner described the incident. Wagner didn't hesitate. Mr. Hale was uncooperative. He refused to show identification. He caused a disturbance and raised his voice. We executed a lawful arrest. Marcus kept his face still, but anger pressed behind his ribs. The chairwoman asked, Did Mr. Hale resist at any point? Wagner nodded. Yes. He hesitated during handcuffing. It was enough to escalate. Jenna muttered under her breath. He hesitated because you bruised him. Langford leaned closer. Stay calm. The chairwoman continued, and body camera footage. Wagner cleared his throat. Cameras malfunctioned. One committee member raised an eyebrow. Both cameras. Yes. The member leaned back. Interesting coincidence. Wagner swallowed. Another council member asked, Did you refer to Mr. Hale in internal chat logs as playing dress-up? Wagner stiffened. Those comments were taken out of context. A second council member held up printed screenshots. Out of what context? Exactly. Wagner's jaw tightened. It was locker room talk. This was not a locker room, the member replied. This was during an active arrest. Wagner faltered, eyes flicking briefly toward Marcus. People exaggerate in private messages. The chairwoman asked sharply, Do you deny these messages reflect biased assumptions? Wagner exhaled loudly. I treat everyone the same. Marcus nearly laughed at the irony. Finally, the chairwoman said, Officer Wagner, step aside. Wagner rose, stiff and trembling. The clerk announced, Mr. Marcus Hale. Marcus took a breath, stood, and walked to the table. His legs felt heavy, but his will felt stronger than it had in days. He sat today. The chairwoman offered a respectful nod. Mr. Hale, thank you for being here. Please describe the incident in your own words. Marcus looked down for a moment, gathering himself. Then he lifted his gaze. I complied with every command, he began. I opened my briefcase twice. I stood still. I spoke calmly. I identified myself clearly and repeatedly. The room was silent. Committee members leaned forward. Marcus continued. But the officers refused to hear my name. They refused to check my ID. They refused to believe a black man in a suit could work at the Supreme Court. One of the members asked softly, Did you resist? No, Marcus said. I hesitated when they tightened the cuffs because it hurt. That hesitation was labeled resistance. Were racial comments made? Marcus paused. Yes, coded ones. Ones designed to humiliate. Ones designed to place me beneath them. A reporter behind a glass pressed closer. Marcus's voice lowered but sharpened. Officer Wagner said, Truth is whatever goes in the report. A murmur rippled through the room. A member leaned in. Do you have written notes? Marcus nodded. Yes. Langford stepped forward and handed the committee a sealed envelope. Mr. Hale documented everything the moment it occurred. His notes match internal logs provided anonymously. The room stilled. The chairwoman took the envelope, opened it, and scanned the pages. Her expression darkened. Finally, she said, "We will hear from Officer Alvarez." Wagner's head snapped up. "What?" The rookie entered through a side door, face pale but determined. His uniform looked too big for him today, as if the weight of truth stretched beyond the fabric. He sat, hands trembling slightly. The chairwoman asked gently, "Officer, did Mr. Hale resist arrest?" "No," Alvarez said immediately. "Did he raise his voice?" "No." "Did he identify himself?" "Yes." "Did the officers verify his ID?" "No." "Were the body cameras intentionally turned off?" Alvarez hesitated, eyes flicking toward Wagner, who stared daggers at him. Then Alvarez straightened his back. "Yes." The room erupted with whispers. The chairwoman raised a hand. "Silence." "Officer Alvarez," she said, "did Officer Wagner instruct you not to intervene?" "Yes." "Did you witness any racial bias in the language used?" Alvarez's throat moved as he swallowed. "Yes, I did." Wagner slammed a hand on the table. "His lying." "Enough," the chairwoman snapped. Wagner's face turned red, his composure cracking. Alvarez spoke shakily. "I know this will get me in trouble. I know I might lose my job. But what happened was wrong. Mr. Hale did everything right. And he glanced toward Wagner. We did everything wrong." Silence followed, thick, heavy, devastating. The chairwoman folded her hands. "Thank you, officer. You may step down." Alvarez rose, shoulders shaking with emotion, and exited quickly. Wagner stood abruptly. "This is a setup. He's betraying us." The chairwoman struck her gavel. "Officer Wagner, sit down or be removed." He collapsed into his seat. The room was ice. At last, the chairwoman turned to Marcus. "Mr. Hale," she said softly, "is there anything you wish to say before we adjourn?" Marcus thought of his bruised wrists, of Alvarez's trembling courage, of every silent bystander, of every quiet humiliation he'd endured in his life. "Yes," he said. He looked around the room and spoke with a quiet force. "What happened to me is not rare. It is not an isolated mistake. It is a result of a system that sees people like me as threats first and citizens second. If this moment means anything, let it mean accountability, not just for one man, but for every policy that makes men like him feel untouchable." The room held its breath. Marcus sat back slowly, and for the first time, he felt the weight beginning to lift. Not gone, not healed, but shifting. The truth, finally, was louder than the lies. The next 48 hours blurred into interviews, statements, and a storm of headlines that refused to quiet down. Marcus moved through hallways filled with worried faces, reporters tracking his steps like shadows. Every door he opened, every room he entered, someone whispered his name. But none of it felt triumphant. Justice rarely did. On the third morning, Langford knocked on Marcus's office door. "It's done," he said. Marcus looked up. "Wagner." Langford nodded. "Terminated. Effective immediately. And the district attorney is filing charges, falsifying reports, unlawful arrest, misconduct, tampering with evidence." Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Langford continued. "The sergeant is suspended, and Internal Affairs is reviewing everyone involved." Marcus rubbed his fingertips together absent-mindedly. "It won't fix what happened." "No," Langford said gently, "but it's a beginning." He placed a small envelope on the desk. "This was dropped off for you." Marcus opened it. A handwritten note. "Thank you for telling the truth. I'm sorry I didn't do more sooner. Alvarez." Beneath the words was a small pen drawing of a badge, cracked down the middle. Marcus felt a pang of emotion. The rookie had risked everything. "Where is he now?" Marcus asked. Langford hesitated. "Administrative leave. Pending protection. He received threats." Marcus's chest tightened. "For doing the right thing." "For breaking rank," Langford said quietly. There's a difference in their eyes. I want to speak to him, Marcus said. You will, when the dust settles. Langford left, closing the door softly behind him. Marcus stared out the window for a long time. The city moved below. Cars, people, stories unfolding everywhere. And yet his world felt painfully still. Later that afternoon, the Supreme Court staff gathered in the administrative conference room. When Marcus entered, every conversation stopped. Colleagues stood, offering quiet nods, gentle pats on the shoulder. One of the senior clerks approached him hesitantly. We didn't know, Marcus. We didn't realize what you'd gone through. Marcus offered a faint smile. I didn't want you to. We're glad you're safe, she said softly. Thank you. Jenna entered with a stack of documents. We need to go over your official statement for the press. They're requesting a personal comment tonight. Marcus frowned. Tonight? Your silence is becoming its own headline, she said. People want to hear from you. He rubbed his eyes. I don't want this to become a spectacle. It already is, Jenna said gently, but we can control how you walk through it. She sat across from him. Marcus, you don't owe the world an emotional confession. You don't have to relive every moment. You only need to speak truthfully. Marcus stared at his bruised wrists. Truth is painful. Jenna leaned forward. But pain doesn't make it less necessary. He nodded slowly. That evening, cameras were positioned in front of a neutral backdrop in a quiet courthouse room. A few staff members stood off to the side. Jenna adjusted Marcus's microphone, her expression focused but soft. Just breathe, she told him. Marcus faced a lens, small, unblinking, waiting. The producer counted him in. 3, 2, 1. Marcus began. My name is Marcus Hale, he said. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded. 2 nights ago, I was wrongfully arrested on my way home from work. He paused. The silence hummed. I complied with every order. I identified myself. I posed no threat, but I was still treated as one. He looked down briefly, then back up. This is not just about my arrest. It's about a system where assumptions can outweigh truth, where bias can outweigh procedure, where dignity can be taken in seconds, and to reclaim it takes everything. Jenna watched from the corner, her eyes glistening. Marcus continued, I want accountability, but I also want reform, training, policies, conversations that go deeper than punishment, because justice is not only about consequences, it's about change. He exhaled slowly, and to the officers who stood up, who told the truth despite the cost, I see you, and I thank you. The producer signaled the end. The camera light faded. Marcus lowered his head. Jenna approached him quietly. You did well. It hurts, Marcus whispered. It should, she said gently. Growth always hurts. Late that night, Marcus walked out of the courthouse alone. The city air was cool. Street lights flickered against the pavement, and the sound of distant traffic drifted through the quiet. A figure leaned against a pillar. Alvarez. His uniform was gone, just jeans and a plain jacket. He looked young, too young to have carried so much in such a short time. Marcus approached. You shouldn't be here. I know, Alvarez said. I just needed to apologize. In person. You don't owe me an apology, Marcus said softly. I do, Alvarez replied. I saw the way they treated you before they even touched you. I knew it was wrong. I should have spoken sooner. You spoke when it mattered, Marcus said. That's courage. Alvarez's eyes filled, just slightly. They might fire me. Marcus nodded. They might. But, Alvarez swallowed. I don't regret it. Good, Marcus said. Don't. A long silence stretched between them. Quiet, heavy, but human. Finally, Alvarez asked, Do you think things will change? Marcus looked out at the city lights, shimmering faintly through the darkness. Not all at once, he said, and not easily, but truth is a beginning. Alvarez nodded, shoulders easing. They stood there together for a moment, 2 men bound by a night that had changed both their lives differently but permanently. Then Alvarez stepped back. Take care of yourself, so. You too, officer. Alvarez smiled faintly. Just call me Daniel. Marcus returned the smile. Take care, Daniel. The young man walked away into the night. Marcus stood alone beneath the courthouse steps, the weight of the last days settling in, but not crushing him. Not anymore, because justice wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean, and it wasn't painless. But tonight, at least, it was real. Marcus lifted his head toward the quiet sky. Not vindication, but truth. And for now, that was enough.